and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum, and sitting in for Ann Northrup, who is off being honored by her old high school. Well-deserved honor is...
Corey Johnson. It's good to be here. The inimitable Ann Northrup.
And Corey, we should point out, Corey's been a co-host here before, we should point out, is a candidate for city council in, what's the number of the district?
The third district.
Third district, which I live in.
Yep.
And Ann lives in.
Yep.
And this is Greenwich Village, Chelsea, and Hell's Kitchen. What could be gayer? So I guess your only opponent is Yetta Curlin.
That's right.
Who has also been a guest co-host on the program. But we're going to get to the news now. All right. Oh, before we do that, actually, we want to talk to folks a little bit about the podcast. You know, we started to provide you with a video podcast last week, and we took away the audio podcast. But you've been writing to me about that and how that's working out for you. And we just want to let you know that we're going to be posting both the video podcast and the audio podcast for the time being. And if you have any troubles with these, you should write to our associate producer who does the podcast, Bill Ballman, at, this is a new email address for him, gayusatv@nyc.rr.com. The video podcast is available via the iTunes store. Just search Gay USA. We're available at all iTunes stores around the world, so please tell your friends in other countries that they can watch our show. It's also available at our website, which is gayusatv.org. And, again, people have had problems, write to Bill. He'll try to work them through with you, but we're going to be posting both for the time being. Now, to the news. In the headlines, it now looks as if the conservatives on the Supreme Court who voted were the ones who voted to take the Prop 8 case. And it looks more and more as if the court will not issue a definitive ruling in that case, even as the odds of them overturning DOMA grow.
And the bandwagon for same-sex marriage continues with 2 more Democratic senators and 1 more Republican senator coming out in favor of marriage equality this week. There are still 7 Democrats who oppose it, and we will tell you who they are.
Okay. Catholic Cardinal Timothy Dolan from New York says gays are entitled to friendship, but not to rights or sex. It's not very friendly.
No. Arizona passes a bill to immunize those who discriminate against transgender people in restrooms. Terrible.
Medicare is challenged to approve medical procedures for transgender people.
Dan Choi is found guilty and fined $100 for a 2010 protest at the White House. He vows not to pay the fine.
The Boy Scouts in Utah have rejected a group of straight organizers out of an LGBT group. It's a complicated story.
The country of Uruguay moves to legalize same-sex marriage.
Maybe the United States will be next. The meningitis scare grows among sexually active gay men in New York, and the city health department is unprepared. We will tell you how you can get a vaccine for meningitis, at least if you're in New York, and probably through your local health department, wherever you are.
And lastly, Andy is going to review a new one-man play starring Michael Urie and Jonathan Toland's Buyer and Seller about a gay man working with Barbra Streisand.
Yeah, can you imagine? If you can't stay up late, 2 thumbs up, or at least my 2 thumbs anyway. All right. Well, last week we just heard the arguments from the court on both cases, and now we're trying to distill all this and see where we're going with all this. And the big story that came out was that it now is obvious that, you remember with the Prop 8 case, California, we were kind of hoping that since we already had a good decision, that the court would not take the case. Remember that was the prevailing wish? And then the court did take the case, and we're going, oh my goodness, what are they going to do? Well, it turns out that it's obvious that the conservatives took the case, and they're seeing it as what? Like their last gasp that maybe they could get Kennedy to go with them and strike it down or something like that?
I mean, that's what it appears. It's hard to predict what
Right.
they're going to do, but I'm sure you guys spoke about this last week, but it looks like they may just try to get rid of the case, wishing that they didn't take the case, and now get rid of it on standing issues.
Well, we know that only 4 justices have to vote to take a case,
Yep.
so they don't need a majority for that. Kennedy, whether he voted to take it or not, was really having buyer's remorse
Yes.
during the thing, and he was like, why did we do this? Why are we taking this? But of course, a lot of the editorial boards, a lot of us are saying, hey, wait a minute, why should we wait? How much time has to go by? What are you going to make us suffer through? Your job is to make a ruling on the constitutionality of this statute or not, and they don't seem to want to do that.
No, and you would think that someone like Kennedy, who is in his late 70s, who coincidentally, and it's amazing that Kennedy made it on the court when Robert Bork's nomination went down. So because of that, we got Kennedy, who wrote the majority opinion in Lawrence v. Texas and Romer v. Evans. You would think that this case could provide history for him. He could actually go out and history's riding on his shoulders on gay rights in America, but he seemed very hesitant, and I was very appalled by John Roberts' questioning in both cases.
Right. Yeah. It was nasty. It was condescending. It was problematic. But we never know what he's going to do.
You never know.
Because he came through on Obamacare. So and then the other issue that was being debated just going back to Kennedy for a second. Don't forget when he wrote the sodomy decision in 2003, allowing us to have sex, which Cardinal Dolan doesn't want us to have. He said this isn't about same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
But Scalia said, oh, yes, it is.
Yes,
Wait a minute.
in his dissent.
So, like, when Scalia questioned Olson, who was arguing to overturn Prop 8, he says, when did it become constitutional for homosexual marriage? He should have said, when you wrote in your dissent in 2003 that it did.
Yes.
But he didn't think of that, or maybe he didn't want to take him on about that. But then there's this whole other argument about, and this was asked of Roberta Kaplan in the DOMA case. Wait a minute. You want equal protection and you want heightened scrutiny of your group, gays, but everybody's falling all over themselves to endorse you. Aren't you really politically powerful? I mean, you can't win with these people. I mean, we don't have a lot of power in a lot of the states. We don't have federal civil rights legislation, and yet they're acting like we're this big, powerful group. I wish.
I thought Roberta Kaplan's answer was actually very good on it. She said something along the lines, to paraphrase, that it's still legal in 30-odd states to fire someone because they're gay, that up until the year, was it 2000, she said, it was illegal for gay people to actually immigrate to the United States, and that in X number of states, in 41 states, gay people can't get married. So the argument that Roberts was trying to make, I think, was to try to say that gay people shouldn't be treated as a suspect class, as they have to treat people of a certain race.
Although the opposition in the case, I can't remember if it was DOMA or it was Prop 8 case, when they asked, well, is it legitimate to discriminate against gays? He said, well, I can't think of any reason except this.
Except this, yeah, falling all over themselves. Nope, gays shouldn't be
Well,
discriminated
that's a hell of
against.
a concession.
It is a big concession.
So, those are rights. And let's
And just to revisit one thing, it was so appalling that Alito made the argument about cell phones and the internet, comparing the...
as a new phenomenon. This is a new phenomenon.
No, I'm sorry. Gay
about
people have been around forever.
David
have been
and Jonathan?
have been in relationships forever.
Ruth and Naomi.
There's nothing new. I guess he was trying to talk about social science. But
Wally Cox and Gomer Pyle.
that doesn't matter.
Yes, exactly. We've been around for a long time.
Yeah.
And then there's people are sort of looking a little harder at the way the United States argued in this case.
Yes.
The Solicitor General, on behalf of the Justice Department and the administration, the Obama administration, and they were like kind of holding back on any kind of a sweeping thing. We might want 9 states, we
didn't make any
we don't want to
sense.
go too far with this. That was sort of we want to let it work its way through the states. So there's some criticism there.
Well, and you saw the justices, the conservatives and the liberals both, didn't buy Don Verrilli, the Solicitor General's arguments on this 9-state or whatever 9-state solution, which are states that currently allow civil unions or domestic partnerships but don't offer marriage. The federal government, the Justice Department, the Solicitor General's office was unwilling to state that they believe that there was a constitutional right to same-sex marriage, to marriage equality. They tried to get this middle ground, and the justices on either side didn't buy it. I thought it was really weak. It didn't stand on its own 2 feet, and the justices really tore them apart.
Right. Okay. And then there was this fascinating article by Noah Feldman. Where did this appear? About how a moderate decision in this case could be disastrous. And he raises a very interesting issue. We can get married in New York, where I happen to be single. But
Me too.
It says men can get married in New York, women can get married in New York to each other. But if we moved to Pennsylvania, we would not be recognized as married, at which point we could marry someone of the other sex. That would be kind of legal bigamy of sorts. I don't think New York would look very kindly upon it, since we can do both in New York. But if we never came back to New York, I mean, it's just crazy that you have this patchwork of laws now. And so that's the thing. I'm sort of thinking, is it possible a guy like Kennedy could sort of pull back and say, well, it would be kind of crazy if we did. Why don't we just get this over with? Although that didn't seem to have support even from people like Ginsburg and Sotomayor.
Yeah, I was really fascinated by Sotomayor's comment. She was really saying, we need to slow down on this and let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Come on, we had racial discrimination for 50 years or 150 years. What's the rush?
Yeah.
I didn't like that. All right. Well, let's talk about some of the developments that have happened since the case was argued. In the Prop 8 case, the New Yorker suggested that they could send the case back for reconsideration in light of the Windsor case, in light of striking down DOMA. There was some suggestion of that. And then we had all these right-wingers coming out not coming out for it so much, but saying the argument is over. Rush Limbaugh said there will be gay marriage nationwide at some point.
Thank you, Rush.
He's catching up with everybody else. And then Bill O'Reilly says the other side hasn't been able to do anything but thump the Bible. And he was very emphatic that, this is going to happen, this is fair, this is what people want, what's the problem?
When Rush Limbaugh and Bill O'Reilly say that you're going to win, the script is written. They don't throw in the towel easily. And you would think that these 9 justices would decide they wanted to be on the right side of history. It's crazy if they don't give a sweeping ruling on this.
Although, what do you think, and I hate to always use you as an example, Alabama, but what do you think would happen in Alabama when a constitutional right to same-sex marriage is declared? They did vote 86% against same-sex marriage there. What would happen in a state like that where they tell all the clerks you got to start doing it?
I think there would potentially be some backlash, but there's always backlash when progress is happening when it comes to civil rights. You can look at when Loving versus Virginia came down, there were still, I think, 9 states that didn't allow interracial marriages and who probably didn't want to allow it. And I'm sure there were hiccups along the way, but it comes down to it's the right thing to do. And ultimately, gay people in Alabama, if they live there and have made their lives there and have families there, which they do, deserve to be treated equally like people here in New York and in California and in other places.
Well, speaking of Alabama and all these other states that aren't likely to have same-sex marriage soon, unless the court does come down on our side, Rex Wachner asked John Davidson, who is the legal director at Lambda Legal, a question that I've been asking of the lawyers for a long time and not getting an answer. And that is, okay, you get married in New York, where it's legal, same-sex marriage, and you move to Florida. Or you're from Florida and you come to New York and you marry. And in this case, he's talking about binational couple, where one is American and the other one is from overseas. Can you then bring your partner in, if you live in Florida, can you bring them into the country? And John says yes.
Yeah.
But the lawyers have been avoiding this. Robbie Kaplan, I asked her right after the arguments in the appeal on the DOMA case, and she said, that's not an issue here. We're not talking about that here. And James Essex, who was from the ACLU, also said, we don't know the answer to that question. But John Davidson from Lambda is saying that he thinks it would apply. And that means, if he's right, that any of you from any of the states where you don't have same-sex marriage, you could come to a state where it's legal, get married, go back to your state. You would be legally married for federal purposes this seems to say.
Well, and let's be let's be clear about one thing on the DOMA case, which is that if the justices, which it seems that they may, strike DOMA down, either on equal protection grounds or federalism grounds, that it doesn't strike all of DOMA down. It strikes a section of DOMA down, Section 3 of DOMA. That's the part that says that the federal government only recognizes marriages between a man and a woman, I believe.
Right.
But the rest of DOMA would stand.
Which Section 2 says, we give to the states the right not to recognize legal same-sex marriages from other states. Because in almost all cases, states recognize marriages from other states, unless it is abhorrent
Yes.
to their policy, to their public policy. Like if you come over from a country where you can get multiple marriages, we're not
Yeah.
going to recognize it here.
It's
that
called
kind of
full
stuff.
faith and credit.
Yes.
The full faith and credit clause of the Constitution allows for most states recognize contracts and obligations and
Yeah.
marriages in other states.
Right. Oh, we skipped over a couple of pictures that we have we do want to share with you. We have a wonderful picture of Edie Windsor, the principal in the case, coming out of the Supreme Court and wanting
What a
to speak to
fabulous-
her. There she is on the right of your screen there with her wing. You know, she was needing some assistance there. She's 83 years old. She's had a heart attack already right after her wife died. And there she is, an absolute joy in the steps of the Supreme Court.
Fabulous picture.
Yeah.
And Edie's an amazing person.
Terrific, terrific. And then if we could go to the next picture, which is the covers of Time magazine. They had a couple of alternating covers of people kissing. This is the real taboo in this country. Not
Yeah.
same-sex marriage, same-sex kissing.
Kissing, yes,
Oh,
exactly.
yes. You know, whenever there's like, you watch a television show and there's like two people of the same sex making out, it lasts for a millisecond. A millisecond.
Yeah.
25 years ago, I made out with my boyfriend on the show just to get people to get over it.
Really?
Yeah, I have a tape of it. Maybe we'll run it
Play
sometime.
that tape?
I said people need to get used to it.
That's right.
All right. Then the other big news this week was even more senators coming out for
Yes.
same-sex marriage. Who
Yes.
do we get? Who do we get?
This week we got Bob Casey, Senator from
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, and Tom Carper, Senator from Delaware,
and a Republican.
and a Republican, Mark Kirk.
About whom there have been some rumors about his sexuality.
There have been.
From Illinois.
Moderate
But he
from
came
Illinois.
out and he cited his gay friends and coworkers and the movie Lincoln. That's what he said helped him make up his mind. He wants to be the party of Lincoln, not the party of Newt Gingrich or whatever.
He had a massive stroke a little over a year ago.
Yeah?
And was
Really?
hospitalized, and they weren't sure how much he would recover. He just started going back to the Senate a few months ago, and he said that life's short. I know that better than anyone.
Yeah.
It's about who we love and who loves us. Let's
The
just
who he
keep it
loves.
that way. That's
it.
right.
And then, not everybody who has a gay child, well, of
Oh,
course, Phyllis
God.
Schlafly has a gay son. She's very much against us. But they asked an Arizona congressman, Matt Salmon, S-A-L-M-O-N.
Matt
or-
Salmon.
Is it Salmon?
Yeah.
Some people say. Is
Yeah.
it you sure that's the
I
way he
think
says
so.
it?
I don't know.
All right, whatever. They asked him about he says, I love my son, but I don't support gay marriage. My son is by far one of the most important people in my life. I love him more than I can say. I just don't want him to be married, to another man. Well, he didn't say that, but he doesn't support us.
And that came on the heels because of Rob Portman
Yes.
from Ohio, whose son came out, whose son wrote a great op-ed in the Yale paper where he goes to school about his coming out and about how it happened.
How's it going
How's what going?
for him?
I think it's going okay.
Okay, we'll see at the next. We'll see if
He
anybody.
came out like good old times through a letter. He wrote a letter to his family,
Yeah.
sent it home, overnighted at home,
Oh, no.
and waited for the reaction.
How did you do it, Corey?
I came
how
out-
old were you?
I was 16 years old.
In Massachusetts?
In Massachusetts, little tiny town. I came out to my mom and I got home from school and she said, where are you? You're late. And I said, oh, I just was dealing with something, figuring out how I was going to come out to her.
Right.
I said, Mom, can we go for a ride in the car?
Oh, I wouldn't.
She
do
said,
that's a big mistake.
A ride in the
No,
car.
No, you should sit them down.
She said,
don't do it while they're driving.
"Oh, okay. I said, I have to tell you something. So we get in the car, we're driving down the highway. I come out to my mom, she's crying, I'm crying. We pull over on the side of the road. All worked out, there were no car accidents. I don't know why I came out to her while driving down the interstate, but that's how, 16.
Very good. I waited till I was out of college and had already been the president of the Gay Student Union at the University of Virginia. I was a little bit cowardly. But that was 1975.
Wow. Next week, by the way, next week, I think it's April 8th, is 14 years out of the closet for me.
Congratulations. Well, congratulations. Long may you wave. Now, there are some holdouts among the Democrats,
Yes.
who are senators at least, obviously House members as well. Here are the ones that we still are working on here, and they're tough nuts to crack in terms of supporting same-sex marriage. From Arkansas, Mark Pryor. Florida,
Bill Nelson.
Yeah. Indiana.
Joe Donnelly.
Yeah,
He was
beat-
just elected.
He beat a Tea Party person, right?
He beat Richard Murdoch.
Right. Louisiana, Mary Landrieu. I mean, they've got to have a, come on, that's a big gay place. North Dakota, Heidi Heitkamp.
Yep.
South Dakota, Tim Johnson. Now, he's retiring.
He's
You think he
retiring.
could, but why isn't he doing it?
Because his son may be running for the seat to replace him. He doesn't want to hamstring his son.
Yeah, well. And then in West Virginia, Joe Manchin, you remember him as the one who's sort of coming around on gun control after doing all of his ads with guns in them and stuff like
The
that.
one that's the most disappointing for me, just given the demographics of the state, is Bill Nelson from Florida.
Yeah.
He was just reelected. He's serving his third term. He's been in Congress forever. He's very popular, senior senator. There's no
Give him a
reason
call.
for him not to come out.
Give him a call.
No reason.
He'll do it. And we wanted to show you a tape that Lawrence O'Donnell ran. We covered this, obviously, in 1996, when the Defense of Marriage Act was passed in 1996 by the Congress. Lawrence is going to explain it, and he's going to show you the people who, the very few people, some of whom are still, many of whom are still around, who stood up for us in those times. It's about a 5-minute tape.
This is great. And look out for Chuck Robb and Bob Kerrey, two senators who voted against it.
Okay.
In the rewrite tonight, another episode of They Were Right. 16 and a half years ago, the vote on the Defense of Marriage Act in the House of Representatives was 342 in favor, 67 opposed. In the Senate, the vote was 85 in favor, only 14 opposed. And now at the Supreme Court, on the verge of rewriting the Defense of Marriage Act as unconstitutional, it is worth remembering who was right when America needed them to be right. Here are some of the voices that were raised in Congress when saying no to the Defense of Marriage Act took real political courage.
I rise in strong opposition to this ill-named Defense of Marriage Act, and I do so on the basis of conscience, Constitution, and constituency.
I understand some of the people who are sponsoring this bill are on their second or third marriages. I wonder which one they're defending.
This bill seeks to divide our nation, turn Americans against Americans, sow the seeds of fear, hatred, and intolerance.
Whether senators are for or against same-sex marriage, there are ample reasons to vote against this bill because it represents an unconstitutional exercise of congressional power.
I recognize that my views are likely to be in the minority as well as unpopular. But this isn't the first time I've come to the well to stand up for what I believe in, and it won't be the last.
Let's not take part in this assault on lesbian and gay Americans and their families.
Discrimination is discrimination, and it is wrong.
This bill is a slap in the face of the Declaration of Independence.
I rise in opposition to this bill, and I oppose it with both my head and my heart.
I feel very strongly that this legislation is fundamentally wrong, and feeling as I do, I would not be true to my conscience or my oath of office if I failed to speak out against it.
To me, this is ugly politics. To me, it is about dividing us instead of bringing us together. To me, it is about scapegoating. To me, it is a diversion from what we should be doing.
This bill is about meanness.
You cannot tell people they cannot fall in love.
These couples are not hurting us with their actions. In fact, they may be helping us by showing us that love can indeed conquer prejudice and hatred.
The arguments against gay and lesbian marriage are essentially the same arguments that we used to hear against black-white marriages.
I also thought for a moment I was in some kind of a revival meeting and was about to be preached at from Leviticus. The particular chapter which was implicitly cited in Leviticus is not very popular in my district because the next verse forbids the eating of shellfish. And I would caution people in citing that.
This bill isn't conservative. It's Big Brother to the core. My judgment is this is a subject the federal government ought not stick its nose in.
Why? are we so mean? Why are we so motivated by prejudice, intolerance, and unfortunately, in some cases, bigotry?
Why do you want to destroy the love they hold in their hearts? Why do you want to crush their hopes, their dreams, their longings, their aspiration? We are talking about human beings, people like you.
Why shouldn't my partner of 13 years be entitled to the same health insurance and survivor's benefits that individuals around here, my colleagues with second and third wives, are able to give to them?
I fought too hard and too long against discrimination based on race and color, to stand up against discrimination based on sexual orientation.
It seems to me quite apparent that our court system is going to yield a decision which will validate same-sex marriages.
We are going to prevail, Mr. Chairman, and we're going to prevail just as every other component of the civil rights movement of this country has prevailed.
I hope that every person on this floor and every person who is going to look at and vote on this bill consider for a moment what the judgment of history might be. If 50 years from now, their grandchildren look at their debates and look at their words in support of this mean-spirited legislation and consider the judgment that will be cast upon them then.
I stand here today with respect and with love for each of you as fellow members of the human race. All I ask in return is that you don't intentionally make me any less worthy than you.
We're moving toward the 21st century. Let us come together and create one nation, one people, one family, one house. The American house, the American family, the American nation.
Oh, I was so moving, I mean, to listen to that stuff. And that's, of course, we should show you some of the opponents. It was really ugly. And even people like Chuck Schumer, who now, of course, everybody's for same-sex marriage now, but he voted for that thing. I mean, there was a lot of cowardice on the floor of that. Everybody was scared of the issue. But up until 2004, we still didn't have. We only got Hillary Clinton last week.
But there were a lot of profiles in courage.
Yes.
There were Chuck Robb, a senator, Democrat from Virginia, Bob Kerrey, Democrat from Nebraska. Of course, we had Ted Kennedy, who was the great gay rights hero in the Senate. Mm-hmm. John Kerry, Ron Wyden from Oregon.
Yeah, John Kerry was especially worried because he was being opposed by William Weld, who was a Republican, but also for same-sex marriage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Carol Moseley Braun.
Yep.
I think Paul Simon.
No, I'm not sure.
No?
Well, maybe. We'll check it out. Okay.
But profiles in courage. 1996, 17 years ago.
Yeah. Not a profile in courage is this guy, Ben Carson. He's the director of Johns Hopkins Division of Pediatric Neurosurgery. Seems to be a competent physician. He was the first guy to separate conjoined twins. But he gave an interview where he said marriage is a well-established pillar of society, and no group, be they gays, be they the North American Man-Boy Love Association, be they people who believe in bestiality. It doesn't matter what they are. They don't get to change the definition. Now, I don't know about the movement to marry animals, Now, he has since semi-apologized, but the people at Johns Hopkins do not want him to be the keynote speaker at their commencement.
Yeah.
He's that right-winger who sort of spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast in front of President Obama and embarrassed him and embarrassed himself, I think, with this tirade, right-wing tirade. Anyway, and speaking of religion, there was a teacher in Germantown, Montgomery County, Ohio, who has been fired from her position as a Sunday school teacher because she put on her Facebook page, "I'm a Christian and I support gay marriage. I don't care if you're gay, straight, black, white, purple, yellow, whatever." So the pastor has relieved her of her duties. You have to be careful how
Christian
you express
love.
yourself, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there was a little problem at the rally for same-sex marriage down in Washington, where some of the people got up to speak and were told to edit their speeches and hide their banners, and it had to do with transgender and being undocumented. And all the groups are falling all over themselves to apologize now, but we shouldn't be so uptight in a setting like that. I mean, it's not like these people were taking all their clothes off or anything. I mean, come on. But, come on. This movement better not get so constricted that it's only about marriage and it's only about this and all that kind of stuff. All right. Let's move on. How about that Timothy Dolan? We're not going to show you his tape. This is the
he was on
Cardinal Archbishop of New York, and he's the president of the National Council of Catholic Bishops. He's a big, blowhard. And so Stephanopoulos and I think Schieffer.
This week with George
and
Stephanopoulos.
Schieffer, they ask him
and
about
Face the Nation.
They ask him about same-sex marriage and gays, and he says, "Well, I'd say to gays, I love you too. God loves you. You're in His image and likeness. We haven't been so good. We need to be better. Do better. They have to see that our defense of marriage is not an attack on gay people, but it's still one man, one woman. We're going to try to do better. Well, what are you going to do better? Gays are entitled to friendship, but we're not entitled to rights or sex. So, I don't exactly see what's changed in their position.
Well, it's the same cloaking of love the sinner, hate the sin type of language in a different way.
Yes.
And in 2011, when marriage equality passed in New York, Dolan was one of the leading opponents against marriage equality. He is, he puts on this big persona, blowhard, lovey image.
Regular guy,
and he is a right-wing radical nut.
Well, and we'll find out about the Pope, because he hasn't really been drawn out about this issue since he has been Pope. Now, Dignity USA, which is the gay Catholic group, immediately wrote to him, has asked for a meeting, and says, let's discuss, how we're going to do better. You say you want to do better? Let's talk about how we're going to do better. So I'll find out if they're actually going to do something with him. Okay, Dan Choi. Dan Choi was arrested in over the military, was arrested at the White House for being chained to the fence and all that kind of stuff, and he's been having a trial that's lasted for 2 years now, and thinks it's malicious prosecution. Well, after a very dramatic court scene where he was defending himself, he gets fined $100. He ends up falling on the floor and crying and becoming uncontrollable. And then he comes back and makes a summation, and he says he won't pay this. But I imagine if he has this conviction, it's going to be tough for him to get back in the military.
I feel bad for Dan. I think Dan's a good guy who has worked really hard and has been an activist. And I don't know what his situation is health-wise, but I would imagine that fighting in war, you probably get traumatized in some way, and we've seen a lot of people have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and also,
which he talks about having.
Yeah, when he came back to be an activist and really put himself out there, and I feel bad for him. He's really put himself out there, and I hope he takes care of himself.
All right. What can you tell us about Carl Sciortino? This is a state representative of Massachusetts who's going to run for Ed Markey's seat, who's running for the Senate.
Carl's a good guy. He's a state rep. He represents part of Boston, openly gay, been in the State House for a while now, and he's been endorsed by the Victory Fund.
And if he gets elected, he'd be the 8th openly gay member of Congress in the current Congress. If he gets elected.
And Massachusetts no longer has an openly gay member of Congress with Barney Frank's retirement.
The place where it all got started.
That's
with
right.
Gary Studs, I guess, right?
Jerry Studs and Barney Frank and
Gary.
Elaine Noble.
Hard G, Gary.
Gary.
Come on, yeah.
I didn't know it was
and
Gary.
And it's gerrymandering also. He's named after Elbridge Gerry and that whole family. And
I didn't know it was
like
Gary.
That. It is. Anyway, and he's gone.
He passed away.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about what's going on with transgender issues this week. A lot of news. In Arizona, they were going to pass a bill to essentially say, you can't go in the bathroom unless it essentially corresponds to what's on your birth certificate. So a person who's transitioning, who's transgender, who's like a guy who's, was a guy, is now wearing dresses or female women's attire, could get arrested if they find out that you were born a man. So they softened the bill. No, we're not going to arrest people going in, but nobody can sue over this if they're thrown out or if they're discriminated against. 7-4, it was passed in the committee in the Arizona House. That's pretty outrageous.
Yeah, no, this is a bill, and we've seen these across the country, basically just blatantly targeting transgender people.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary.
Especially around bathrooms.
No issues.
That's happened in New York.
Yeah, there are no issues with it.
No.
It's just a way to demonize transgender people.
Right. Now.
Shameful.
Medicare has never paid for transgender surgery, treatments, that kind of stuff, medically necessary health care. So the government is now looking into this, and they say they're going to conduct a scientific study on this. So this is encouraging,
That's
right?
great.
I mean, it looks like it. I'm not sure if it's going to happen, but they adopted the ban on this 30 years ago, and I think understandings of this were very, very different at the time. Okay, and so the transgender groups seem to be happy about that. We had news about the transgender man, Thomas Beatty, this week, the transitioning, well, I shouldn't say transition, but Thomas was living as a man, but had not gotten rid of ovaries and all that other kind of stuff, and had children. So he was very famous as the pregnant man. Well, trying to get a divorce, but an Arizona judge, we're back in Arizona again, what's in the water out there, refused to grant a divorce for him. And just says you weren't really married in the first place and all this kind of stuff. It's just terrible. Then we have a picture here of Calliope Wong, a student who's trying to get into the all women's college, Smith College. There, that's Calliope, and they're saying no. You're not a real, basically you're not a real woman. And what is Calliope supposed to do? So they're working on that. Equality Pennsylvania reports that the Chambersburg area school district has reversed its decision on having a gay-straight alliance, and they are going to have one. Well, the ACLU got on the case, and that's what always happens, and we always win. And did you read the story about this Utah? What was it? The Utah Pride Center. It's a gay group, right? So they got straight people together in the Pride Center and said, "Let's start why don't you start a Boy Scout troop? We won't have anything to do with it because they don't take gays." So the Boy Scouts said, "No, we're not taking you either."
Living in the Stone Age, the Boy Scouts.
In North Carolina, a guy named Buddy Collins has been nominated to the North Carolina Education Board, State Education Board, by Governor Pat McCrory, a Republican. This is a guy who has fought every effort to stop anti-gay bullying. He's a very retrograde person, but they're putting him on the board again.
This is why elections have consequences and matter. We had a Democratic governor there, Beverly Perdue, who decided not to run for re-election. The Democrats couldn't come up with a good candidate, so instead we got Pat McCrory, who pretended he was a moderate. He was the former mayor of Charlotte, and is doing a lot of right-wing stuff now in his first year in office.
Well, here's a quote from this guy who was appointed to the school board. He said, "I think homosexuality is a sin. If they want to make fun of them, I don't have a problem with that."
Oh my God.
That's one of his quotes. Well.
And he's going to have a seat on the State Board of Education.
State Board of Education.
What a shame.
Well, it's not like we're doing such a great job in New York on integrating gay issues and putting all that out there. We could talk about that sometime, maybe when you get on the city council.
Yes.
If you are elected, we don't. Chris Kluwe, the player the Vikings football player who supports us so much, he was asked about, what would it be like if somebody came out? And he said, those of you who are worried about a gay teammate checking your ass in the shower or hitting on you in the steam room or bringing too much attention to the team, I have 4 simple words for you. Grow the F up.
He is great. We love Chris Kluwe. He's the punter for the Vikings, has been a stalwart ally. And, I was a football player. I came out. I was captain of the football team, and there were no problems in the locker room.
No
problems. Issues. No problems.
16 years ago.
Yep.
Right?
No problems.
Okay. 14 years ago. Whatever. I don't want to make you too old.
14 years ago.
I don't want to make you too old.
14 years ago. I turned 31 this month. Getting old.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn 60 this year, and I don't mind saying. We told you, people around the country have been reading a lot about political corruption in New York this week, probably.
Too much of it.
It's outrageous. We're not going to go into all that. But we did tell you that a woman named Lisa Winters, who ran the Bronx Community Center here, gay community, LGBT community center, Pride Center, was indicted. Well, she was convicted and sentenced to, she's getting like 2 years in jail for embezzlement. So, she embezzled $338,000 from the Pride Center. That's community money. And so, sorry, Lisa. We all knew her, but not good. And not good is what's going on. And now where are we? This story in Applebee's. I think this was in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. This is in Rice Lake. And a gay employee there was, openly gay and gets harassed by the boyfriend of one of the other employees who beats the crap out of him. And then they fired the guy who was bashed because he was drawing unwanted attention to the Applebee. Well, thank goodness Greg Flynn, the CEO of Apple American Group, which owns the franchise, intervened and got him his job back. But boy, was he mistreated.
I don't know if I'd want to work there.
Well,
after dealing with that, they should pay him some, money, punitive damages, pain and suffering. Should sue them.
All right.
But it goes back to the point that gay people can still be fired in many, many states for simply being gay.
Right. Well, not Wisconsin. That was one of the first states to do a statewide. They did a statewide
referenda.
No. They did a statewide gay rights bill.
Okay.
Before New York City had one.
Yeah.
That was one of the. I think it was
like in the early,
84.
Okay.
84. It was one of the first states to do it. They had an out gay guy. Well, no, they did a great job out there on that.
Wisconsin.
They do have. Yes, they do have a law against same-sex marriage or a constitutional amendment against
constitutional amendment.
marriage. But they also have gay rights.
Yep.
Go figure.
And they have Tammy Baldwin, who we love.
Yes, they do. All right, shall we move on to some international news? Uruguay. The Senate this past week approved a bill to open marriage to same-sex couples 23-8. What do you think the vote would be in our Congress these days? I mean, we're getting there.
We would
Don't
lose
we have 50
right now.
We don't
We'd
have
lose
50.
in the House.
We'd lose in the House?
We'd lose in the House. We
Right.
have too many Democrats and too many Republicans against us in the House.
Well, this is terrific. President Jose Mujica is prepared to sign the bill. They're getting ready to go. They just have to. They made some modifications to it, and one of the modifications have to do with marriage in general, including the law. Brings the marrying age for women and men to 16. Before this, the ages were 12 for girls and 14 for boys.
My God.
Well,
That's a good change then.
So yes,
Wow.
the gay groups approve of the change.
Yeah.
Well, and then there's Colombia is going to take it up this week, but it's much more conservative. And the bishops there, the Catholic bishops, are really railing against it. The bishops in Uruguay kind of knew they were going to lose, and they didn't make so much of a fuss. What's the point? All right, in the Ivory Coast, who knew? But they've had a gay bar there for a long time, and it's sadly going to be closing. And they're not saying it was any kind of a paradise in the Ivory Coast any more than I guess it is in New York sometimes. But they did have this bar, and now they're not going to have it anymore.
Yeah, it was a central point for meeting for the gay community.
Now, how about the Pope? You catch him this week in Holy Week, washing the feet of the prisoners and kissing their feet. You didn't catch this on TV?
No.
Well, he did something very controversial.
What did he do?
He washed the feet of 2 women among the 12 prisoners. This is considered an absolute a breach of Vatican protocol.
Heresy.
So he's upsetting some of the traditionalists. Now, he hasn't done anything yet on our side other than, speak up for the poor, which is all very nice and well and good. So we'll see where he goes with all this. It would be nice if he opened up ordination to women. We have a disturbing video to show you. We're just going to run it sound under from Russia. This is a gay activist there who was protesting, trying about having a gay pride parade and all that kind of stuff. And a neo-Nazi just comes up in front of the cameras at a press conference and starts wailing on him and beating the crap about him. And the perpetrator was not arrested. Well, we can get that off the screen, but I'll tell you, Russia, doesn't make me particularly want to go there.
No, I mean, Putin has been cracking down on any type of dissent and protest. Look at that band Pussy Riot, where they sent those girls to jail.
And now he's going to be going to the Netherlands, and they're going to be flying rainbow flags all over the city in his face.
That's great.
This is not just us, this is the government.
Putin's a dictator.
Yep. Hey, he just recently, what did he do? He banned gay couples from adopting Russian children.
Yep.
He banned U.S. citizens from adopting children from Russia back in January. So, anyway, that's terrible. All right. How about AIDS news? Shall we move on?
Yes.
Okay. How you doing? How's the campaign going, by the way?
Campaign's going great.
Yeah?
Working really hard. 7 days a week.
I know. This is in Chelsea, The Village, and
Hell's Kitchen.
Hell's Kitchen.
Corey2013.com.
Oh, okay. You're free to let people know. That's great. All right, that's entertainment news. Let's go into AIDS news. The big news is about meningitis again.
There's
What are you hearing? What are you hearing about the meningitis outbreak, Corey?
There's a huge meningitis scare in New York City.
It's for real.
Yeah,
Not just a scare.
There have been, I think, 23 cases.
It's scary that we're not dealing with it really properly.
Yeah, 23 cases, and they're saying that before they were saying anyone who was HIV positive should get the meningitis vaccination. Now they're saying that anyone who has sex with men.
Yeah, for a while they were saying only if you meet people on the computer.
Yes.
Well, what the hell does that have to do with it?
They said computer or apps.
What the hell does that have to do with it? I mean, it may be more common among people who happen to do that, but come on. So, if you're in, I mean, this is around the country. But if you're in New York, they're finally offering some, Bill tells us, some free meningitis vaccines, right?
At GMHC.
Go to gmhc.org or call GMHC up and ask them about this. And they have certain dates. You need a reservation to get a vaccine. But if you are a sexually active gay man, go get it, right?
And the New York City Department of Health is also offering free vaccinations as well.
I had trouble finding it on the website, but they are all over the city. There are places that you can go. They don't seem to be. Sometimes you have to pay for it when you go there, though. So
I believe it's free.
Well, they're not all free.
Okay.
I think it's a sliding scale. I was told when I called 311.
Well, then go to GMHC where it is free.
Okay. All right. And then there's Kansas, which is passing a bill.
This is insane.
It says it says right now, if a firefighter or a paramedic is exposed to bodily fluids while treating a court victim, they need a court order to get the victim's blood tested for infectious diseases. But they're now going to pass a new law eliminating that court order. And the worry here is that they will actually end up quarantining people with HIV.
Yeah,
a la Cuba.
That's the point of it, to quarantine HIV positive people. It is. It's hard to believe some of the stuff that we talked about today and that you see in the news in 2013 in this country, how people are being treated.
Well, I mean,
it's a backlash against progress.
We don't get the younger generation on the show too often with Ann and me and everything. I mean, how do you think it is going among your peers in terms of safety and people taking precautions and all that kind of stuff? What's your feeling?
You mean people practicing safe sex?
Yeah, and all that stuff. How difficult is it?
I think that a lot of people don't practice safe sex.
And what can be done?
I think there needs to be more education done, and that can be said in a really general way, but I think people need to know that there are real consequences to getting sexually transmitted diseases and also becoming HIV positive.
But we've talked about it on the show before here. I mean, what is it that keeps people safe? What is it that keeps you safe?
I think fear.
Okay.
I think fear is what drives people a lot of times. And I think you have to tell people what the consequences are. It's like, I don't know how effective they are, but I think those commercials that people have shown of people smoking and what happens to a lung that's smoking.
The conventional
tactics.
wisdom in public health is the scare tactics don't work.
Don't work.
But I have to say, when I was a kid, actually when I was your age, when I first saw a person, people who were affected by AIDS on television and what was going on with them, that is what kind of made me sit up and, really be more safe. Bill will have some thoughts about this and maybe can run over here and tell us about what he thinks works. Okay, because Bill is our resident AIDS expert. All right, we've got about 8 minutes left. Should we move on to entertainment news?
Yes.
Well, okay. Let's see. We want to mourn the death of Richard Griffiths. We've got a picture of him there when in the famous movie With Nail and I, where he played the gay uncle, Monty, in a very famous role. I mean, this guy, Richard Griffiths on the right there, that big heavyset actor, you know him from the Harry Potter movies, and he was also in The History Boys playing a professor who groped boys. In a very sympathetic character, by the way, and he won the Tony Award and the Olivier Award. He was a great actor. I mean, so his gay roles were not exactly what you'd want to give GLAAD awards to, but They were really iconic roles that involved gayness. Richard Griffiths, a terrific actor, dead at the age of 65.
That's young.
Well, he was enormous. I mean, I'm not trying to make any, but the guy was enormous. And I read in his interviews with him, he thinks he was exposed to some kind of radiation when he was like 8 years old that screwed up his glands, and that's why he became this completely enormous person. But there it is.
He's a great actor.
Lucky to have him. There's going to be a world premiere of a Harvey Milk, a thing called I Am Harvey Milk, a new oratorio with music and words by Andrew Lippa, who's won the Tony and Grammy. It's world premiere at the Norse Auditorium in San Francisco. When is that going to take place? Between Thursday, June 27th and June 28th. So, and then gay men's choruses across the country are going to perform this thing. I Am Harvey Milk. Now, is this an April Fool's joke that Rupert Everett is going to play Pope Benedict? Is this an April Fool? It came out.
No, I saw that. I thought that was very strange.
It came out before April 1st. But it says that Rupert Everett, who's on stage now playing Oscar Wilde in London, is going to play the Pope. And he says if gay people don't like it, they can lump it. He was an interesting character. More information on that, please.
From Oscar Wilde to Pope Benedict.
Michelle Schacht, we've told you about her and all her travails. So she shows up.
I saw this.
At Moe's Alley. Where is this? In Santa Cruz. She's the one who went on this anti-gay tirade. And she just sat out there covered in a hazmat suit that people could write on, and her lips were
Did you see the video?
No.
Oh, I watched the video. The video is crazy. She was sitting on the ground with her guitar in a white hazmat suit with tape over the mask, and she's sitting there playing the guitar outside of this club and asking people to take a Sharpie marker and write on her hazmat suit.
Okay.
She's lost it.
Michael Musto was interviewing Ian McKellen at a party after the opening of Breakfast at Tiffany's, which I do not recommend. And he asked him about, let's see, he was talking about, he said he once did an audition for Blake Edwards, who was married to Julie Andrews, the late Blake Edwards. And afterwards I said, do you think he'd employ me if he knew I was gay? And I was told, what's the problem? He's gay, and so's his wife. So there you have it in the Village Voice from Michael Musto.
Julie Andrews is gay?
Two icons. Well, that's what Ian McKellen heard. And, on this show, we pass it along. I love Julie Andrews. I like Blake Edwards movies. I like Ian McKellen. And I like Channing Tatum. And not just because he's good looking, but he was at a preview screening for his new film, White House Dawn, and he told the British tabloid The Sun about, he says, about George Clooney. He says, I've spent time with George Clooney. He's the most interesting man on the planet. He can do it all. Yep, I guess what I'm saying is,
I'd have sex with him.
That's what he said. Good for him.
I'd have sex
you know
with
what? I've been retired for a while, but I think I would too.
With George Clooney?
Sure.
Yeah. And with Channing Tatum?
Sure.
And with both of them?
Why not?
Okay.
You're
all in.
You're talking.
Texas Hold'em.
That's done. All right. I have a couple of plays to review. Can you bear with me?
I love plays.
Has Hands on a Hard Body closed yet?
I went and saw it.
Well, what did you think?
I actually really liked it.
Oh, I know there are varying opinions about this.
People I was with hated it.
Yeah.
I thought it was enjoyable.
I couldn't warm up to it. Speaking of falling in love, I was in love with Keith Carradine when I was a kid. He did Nashville, the movie by Robert Altman in 1975, and I was totally in love with him. Used to play that song all the time. I'm easy, I'm easy. Remember that? Anyway, the book is by out-gay playwright Doug Wright, and it's about people who are trying to win a hard-body truck. They have to keep their hands on it.
On the hard
they have
body.
to keep their hand on the truck.
One hand on the truck at
Every
all times.
6 hours, they get a 15-minute break, and they sing about it.
Yes.
It's a little static because they can't take their hands off the truck. Although in a couple of fantasy sequences they do. Anyway, I just thought that the characters deserved more. I thought they were kind of stereotypical, that they weren't interesting. I just wasn't that interested.
There was an openly gay actor.
Yeah.
I think Jay Armstrong.
That's at the Brooks Atkinson.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's not going to stay open much longer.
Well, that's the rumor that I heard. So if you agree with Corey, you better run down there.
You didn't like it.
I did not.
No.
there's a Brits off Broadway series at 59 East 59th. They bring in little British shows that that they gather up over the year. And the first one is called Good with People. It's by a guy named David Harrower, who did Bluebird last year at the Atlantic Theater in your district in Chelsea, which was terrific, with Simon Russell Beale. It features an attractive young man, Andrew Scott Ramsey, who stays in a small hotel in his old seaside town where they build nuclear submarines. The proprietor is a middle-aged Blythe Duff. And there's some clever dialogue, but I just thought it was a little too mysterious for me. It did have one of the best lines I've heard this year, because he's sort of an educated kid who was living in this town with all these tough. And he says, whenever I was in this town, if I ever said anything intelligent, I always thought I was being. I always felt stupid when I said anything intelligent in this town. Well, we all know what that's like sometimes.
Yes, we do.
I think. And then finally, you can put the picture up now of Michael Urie. This is the play Buyer and Seller, Cellar. It's by Outgate playwright Jonathan Tolins, who did Twilight of the Golds and The Last Sunday in June. And it really scores. It's a fantasy, get this, about what it would be like to work in Barbra Streisand's basement as a shopkeeper. And I don't want to tell you any more about it.
I want to go see it,
I don't want to tell you any more about the plot so that it can unfold as delightfully for you as it did for me.
Did you like it?
Michael Urie, who was so good in The Temperamentals and Ugly Betty, makes it a rare, funny, and insightful treat. It's at the Rattlestick in the Village. I loved it, and I don't like anything, as you know. We got any time left?
You loved it.
Oh, I really loved it.
Oh, wow.
I had a great time. I don't know if the Barber Queens are going to like it. Because, it does take a few shots at Ms. Streisand. And I lived with the Barber Queen for a couple of years, and they're very serious.
They're very serious.
They're very, very serious.
I'm not a Barber Queen. I like Barbra Streisand, but
I like her okay.
I'm not a sycophant.
I'm going to be seeing Kinky Boots this weekend with Anne. And then there's a new play opening up with David Greenspan, the great off-Broadway actor. He's going to play Dan Savage in a play called It Gets Worse.
It Gets Worse.
Well, I have no idea.
How inspiring and aspirational.
I don't know what this is. I think David Greenspan is terrific. Where is it going to be? It's going to be at something called Here. That's the name of the theater. So Corey, we got 30 seconds left. Tell us about your council race and tell us what you're running on and doing.
It's going really well. If you live between Canal Street and 62nd Street on the west side of Manhattan, it's going to have a hotly contested election. I'd love your support.
What's the big issue this year?
Affordable housing, education, quality of life issues, making sure we preserve our neighborhoods, supporting small businesses.
Yeah.
And
you're running against
keeping Gay USA in business.
And you're running it against Yetta Curlum. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with Ann.
Thank you.
Thanks, Corey.